The topic that we have selected for this month's webinar is just how to gather and use feedback to make better business decisions in a post-pandemic world. So I've sat in a number of presentations like this with other organizations. I've done this with Kate's Boylston. We've done it with OGR as an organization before. We've done things with Cana in the past. And so these are fun topics to have, certainly pertinent to the profession. If you have questions throughout this, we'd love to answer them both in person, or if you want to do it on the chat line, or if you have your account manager here in the Zoom meeting and you want to ask them directly, you can private message them, obviously, via the chat as well. But it's multi-purpose. We definitely want to build those connections with you. It's great to see your faces and really put names behind faces and hear about your experience also. So we'll let this be interactive because this is a small enough group that we can keep it that way. So if you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to kind of raise your hand or put it on the Slack channel. And I've just kind of asked Hannah and Caden to monitor that, excuse me, not Slack channel, the chat line. And they can interrupt me and we can ask that question kind of in live time so we can get your questions answered. But this is to be a resource for you. We want to help you in your business efforts and really get the most use out of the services here with DomaniCare. We'll also talk about just some fun, new, innovative things that we're working on, and you'll see the direction that we're headed to, and we want to move in that direction to ultimately help you. You are our clients, and we want to help you grow your business and really serve the families that are there in your community. So without further ado, we'll kind of dive in. And since I haven't been able to personally meet all of you, and sometimes you may see some things in various marketing efforts, but to kind of humanize it a little bit, I'd love to start off with an introduction of myself, and then we'll kind of go through the evolution of the funeral profession. Whoa. Need to turn my notifications off. Just got a phone call. We'll go through the evolution of the funeral profession, and we won't spend a ton of time there, but it is an interesting history lesson to just look at how it's evolved, and now seeing the period that we're at right now and the rapid fire speed in which things are growing and changing and evolving, how we can stay ahead of that. Feedback is crucial. So we'll go back to just the fundamentals of what exactly is feedback in the various forms that you're able to get it. We'll then talk about just various techniques that you can do both on your own, but certainly we want you to leverage our capabilities as much as possible so that we can just help you. That is the primary purpose, and we're here to serve you. So we'll talk about how to gather and use that feedback. And maybe you're doing some of these things already, but maybe it'll spark some new ideas of ways that you could implement this with your staff, and share some best practices. And I'll share some examples of other funeral homes that I have discussed that have used this service in various ways. We want this to be idea generating too, so that you can figure out maybe what works for you, and that you can continue to up that level of service. And then we'll kind of just do some summary action items and talk about very briefly what we will be discussing in next month's webinar at the beginning of November, which will be really exciting. So, and again, we have a few people joining us. That will happen. Say hello to all of them via the chat, and hopefully this will be a great time. Thank you again for your time today. So moving over to the introduction, I'll introduce myself first, since I'm the one that'll be mostly talking, although I wish we could go around and have you meet every person on the DomaniCare team. Hopefully you know your account manager pretty well, but I'll do myself and the company at large. So DomaniCare has been around for, it'll be 3 years, won't it, Riley? 3 years in October. We launched at the Salt Lake City National Funeral Directors Association conference. It was super convenient for us because it was in our backyard, and we went with I think 2 accounts that we were working with at the time, and made some marketing materials and did a little pop-up booth there, and away we went. And it has been an exciting ride so far. Some other fun just statistics that show what we've been able to accomplish through that period of time. We've generated over 20,000 5-star Google reviews now for our funeral home partners across the United States. We have over 900 funeral homes that are on our platform. And that has happened, it's now been over 2 years, so 3 years in total. Last year, kind of an interesting stat that has gotten some interesting attention from other groups, but just that we've done 1.5 million text message conversations in the year 2020. So during the pandemic, where people are alone and isolated, scared, nervous, and obviously losing people, that was a very unique opportunity for us to be able to dialogue with so many different people from all different walks of life that were experiencing not only grief, but doing that within a pandemic has been very insightful for us. We have 85 employees through our various endeavors and growing, and we're just so grateful for the raving fans that we have too. It's been an honor and a privilege to work with you and other colleagues in this funeral profession. And a little bit just too about me personally. I've been in the profession over 10 years now. I came into the profession from the pre-need side of the house and have always been in kind of marketing and operational roles. I'm a very creative person, as my team knows, and this has been a dream come true to be able to do this together with my brother-in-law, Riley, who's on here. Riley, you can wave your hand. So Riley and I started this together. We married sisters, and we both were in the profession before. He's my yin to my yang. I mean, we complement each other very, very well in our different skill sets. Riley was a personal producer and did 1.67 million in pre-need sales his first year and built a very large territory in kind of the Ohio and greater surrounding areas early on in his career. But this has been a dream come true for us to kind of take our joined passion together and to bring some innovative solutions to the profession so we can help more families, but also more funeral homes continue to grow their business. I am married and have 4 kids, 2 girls. My oldest, her birthday is today. She turned 14, and the youngest boy is 6 years old. He actually turned 6 this month too. 3 of my 4 kids have birthdays in October, as well as a wedding anniversary and the NFDA conference and Halloween. It's a little bit of a busy month. So anyways, that's a little bit about me. But let's dive into the subject matter here, and we're going to start with the evolution of the funeral industry. We took the next slide, Caden, if you want to go there, and I have Caden running the slides for me because Zoom did something new where when I present, I can't see everybody's faces. And when I talk, I want to talk to the people, not looking at my presentation. So I have my presentation over here on the side. I promise I'm not distracted, but that's why I have Caden running the slides for me so that I can kind of multitask a little bit in this meeting. But we got this information from a Funeral Wise article that was written several years ago that I thought was interesting. And again, for those of you that are in this profession, you probably know this information better than we do. But it's important to look at it because we are in this crossroads where innovation and change and the consumer preferences are changing pretty rapidly. I think the pandemic definitely sped that process up. And it's been fascinating to see how everyone is pivoting through that process. But if we go back to the very, very beginning, you know, funerals is a several hundred, if not 1,000-year-old ritual, right? You go back to Christ's time and being buried in a tomb and the gathering that existed during that period. That has been around for generations and generations. Maybe didn't look exactly the way it does today, but they definitely existed. And as we understand it historically, funerals are organized or were organized by families. And they would do some type of a memorial service as a family and take care of their loved one in that way. Eventually, the undertaker did emerge through that process and helped facilitate the funeral service. And it's interesting, I sometimes dabble in genealogy. And one thing that I learned about my own ancestor in the early, mid 1800s, get this, this is fascinating. My 3rd great grandfather helped settle Utah, where we live, and he was assigned by the governor to come and be the undertaker for the city of Provo. He was a very early settler in that area. And here I am all these years later, and we've established this business in that very same city in this profession. Between that period and now, we haven't had any family members in funeral service, but somehow we've bridged the gap. And the other fun fact, the reason why I learned this story is on the website familysearch.org. They can do face recognition with your ancestors. And he was the one, aside from my father, that looked the most like me. So that was why I dove down that rabbit hole. I read his biography and I thought, oh my goodness, I have this ancestor that was in the same town doing funeral related service right there. And here we are. So he was an undertaker. So undertakers have been around for a little bit of time. The origin of embalming, we learned, came from the Civil War. So people that had passed away in the war and needed to be transported back to their families, that is where the origin of embalming came. We also have seen the transition and evolution from coffins to caskets, right? And then I think what we are all most familiar with is the multi-generational funeral homes that have stayed family-owned for generation and generation. And some of you may come from those types of funeral homes that have been around for third generation, fourth generation, fifth generation. All that is very, very common in this profession. And sure, there's a little bit of disruption going on as it relates to some larger conglomerates that have bought multiple locations and things of that nature. But generally, we're kind of in this crossover here of funeral homes that stay in the family, and we love the funeral homes that are staying within those families. It's a wonderful thing to support and such a gift to the community, I think. But then you see the very top here of just competition that fuels change, and the last decade that I've been in this profession, you have families that are transient. Gone are the days where it's the same family lives in the same community for generation after generation. In fact, COVID did this too, didn't it? People are moving out of cities and moving into cities at a very rapid rate. Again, just going from my personal experience here in Utah, we have an 18% growth rate over the last, I think it's year or 2 years. It's the highest in the nation of growth of people coming largely from Washington, Oregon, and California inland. So we have this massive influx of people that have come into this community. Now, when that happens, they don't have any relationships or affiliations with a funeral home. And if a death occurs, which we know death happens unexpectedly, very, very often. And when that happens, where are they going to turn? And who are they going to turn to? And you've probably listened to a lot of this before. This is why we really tout Google reviews. But today we're going to focus more on just feedback, which reviews are a form of feedback. We're going to talk about feedback specifically so that you can learn and understand the demographic that is in your community and that you can adjust your business decisions to match the needs of your ever-growing and changing and evolving community. And that is going to keep you ahead of the competition that's there. So there's always going to be competition that exists, and there's probably going to be new players that come in with new innovative ideas within this space. I think there's a lot of interest in this space, but we believe and are champions of the funeral home owner and just funeral service in general. And so everything we do is to help support in that effort. But that competition and sometimes natural events that occur like a pandemic, those things are the things that fuel change. And we're right here at the epicenter of that. And I think for those of you that are obviously clients of DomaniCare, I think hats off to you in wanting to embrace new and innovative ways to reach people and to get this feedback. That shows that you're progressive. And I think that it definitely shows that you're wanting to stay ahead of that curve and kind of lead your community into wherever that change exists. Go ahead, next slide, Caden. So this is a book that our staff really, really loves, The Experience Economy. I don't know, raise of hands, have any of you read this or heard of this book before? Any takers? Nope. Okay, I highly recommend it. I think regardless of what industry that you're in, so write this note down, read The Experience Economy. Joseph Pine and James Gilmore did a phenomenal job with this book. So we could do a whole thing just on the experience economy, probably. But I want to just talk about this progression of economic value. It's one of the concepts that are discussed within that book. And so you'll see it's a very basic chart and graph here. The four things as you go up this scale of commodities, goods, services, and experiences. Think of this a little bit in the history that we just reviewed of the funeral profession. And the example that they use, and this is one that transcends our profession, but I think everyone in America can relate to, is Starbucks and the coffee experience. How many of you have had Starbucks before at some point in your life? Most of you, even if you're not raising your hand. Yeah, so the Starbucks experience, you've probably heard that name before, but let's dumb it down a little bit further and let's just talk about coffee in general and the evolution of coffee. There's lots of different ways that you can get your coffee, right? You can buy coffee beans and you can grind those beans and you can make that coffee at home, right? That would be a commodity, is just the coffee bean as it exists. Taking it up another level, and we're talking about the goods of that, would probably be the evolution of like the Keurig machine or your coffee machine that you have that's in there that is kind of prepackaged, ready to go. We take it up a notch. You're not having to do all the manual labor of grinding the coffee bean, right? But we bump it up to kind of the Keurig experience. The next level is services. So if you go to a breakfast diner and you'd like to have coffee, somebody has already done all the brewing for you and they bring it out for you. And that is a part of a service. And so you've had the evolution of that. And then we go up to this top tier, which is experience. And that is where we use the example of Starbucks. Now, whether you're a Starbucks fan or not, and I know some people have strong opinions on the matter, there's no doubt that they have been wildly successful internationally. They've done a phenomenal job. And why is that? Number one. And number two, why are we paying $4.95 for a cup of coffee that we know costs way less than $4.95? Well, the answer is it's the experience that you have. Number one, it's a consistent experience. You can get the same coffee at every Starbucks location, whether you're in Beijing, China, Manhattan, New York, or if you're in Des Moines, Iowa, you can get that same experience that's there. The other thing is you can often walk into a Starbucks and they'll be playing live music or have really soothing jazz music playing over the intercom. They'll have treats and goodies and pastries that exist there. You can purchase music. They have lounge furniture so that you can sit back and relax. You can talk to your coworkers, your friends, your family. It's a place that people like to go do homework. And truth be told, I love Starbucks. I'm not a coffee drinker, but I love Starbucks because I grew up in Seattle. And yesterday, for about an hour and a half, I took a step out of the office and I went to Starbucks with my headphones and I just did a little bit of work at Starbucks. It was a nice change of pace and scenery for me to sit down in a great environment and have a good experience. And did I overpay for my drink and food? You bet. But it was a great experience for me there. And so that was the example that they used in this. And I think that it is such a great example as it relates to funeral service and what we are doing. Are we the type of business that is strictly selling a commodity? You just are selling a casket or an urn or whatever other merchandise that you sell, a registry book. Is that all it is? Is that all people come to you for, is just to buy the commodities? No. And in fact, there are things out there, right? Costco sells caskets. You could buy some of these things online. So why do they come to you? It is because you provide an experience. Now, wherever you're at on that spectrum, and our clients range from a very traditional funeral home to cremation brands to cemeteries. There's a lot of different layers within that. I remember recently, I don't know if any of you have heard of the company Parting Stone, where they do solidified remains. And I talked to Justin, kind of entrepreneur to entrepreneur, when we were at the Cana conference in Seattle. And I was talking to him about this very thing. And I'm like, okay, well, you do kind of just this service. It's a little bit more automated. And they send, the ashes and they put them into solidified remains and they get the final result. But then he talked about that experience, and he has his staff, anyone that worked on that individual family or loved one and did the solidified remains, his staff writes a personal card that is accompanied with the parting stone when they receive it and it's beautifully packaged, he does his best with the type of business that he runs to create an experience through that. And that creates these raving fans that then they say, gosh, everything I love, the solidified remains, but they wrote us an individual card. They did all these things that upped that level of experience. That's what creates raving fans, repeat customers, and where, he is definitely in that period of change and innovation and pivoting from what has been done historically, but he's still creating this wonderful experience for the families. So I thought that was interesting. It was a good example. So we've now talked Starbucks, we've talked parting stone a little bit. As we talk about these things, I want you to be thinking about your individual brand and your individual location and your staff. What are you doing currently to make this experience exceptional? And have you changed your experience at all in the last 18 months? And if you haven't, I would challenge you to definitely dive into that and figure out, well, what could you change? Because things are changing, and there may be some information that you need to glean that will give you the insights you need in order for you to continue to grow your business in kind of this post-pandemic world. It's an amazing opportunity to get feedback. Go ahead, next one. So before we dive into feedback, just again as an FYI to remind everybody, if you have questions throughout this or thoughts, feel free to plug them into the chat line. And then Caden, if you'll just pause and say, hey, we have one on there, that'd be great. We can pause and listen to that question. So no pressure, you don't have to do it, but just wanted to set that framework for you. All right, so what is feedback? That seems probably pretty elementary, but let's talk about how it exists, feedback, especially in our space. So here's a definition we put together. Customer feedback is information provided by customers about their experience with a product or service. Its purpose is to reveal their level of satisfaction and help product, customer success, and marketing teams understand where there is room for improvement. Companies can collect customer feedback proactively by polling and surveying customers, interviewing them, or by asking for reviews. So that's kind of a high-level definition that transcends any profession that's out there. This is a very unique audience because you are DomaniCare clients. So you are already asking for feedback just from this alone. But I know that many of you may be doing other things as well aside from DomaniCare. I'm not naive to think that the only way you're getting feedback is through DomaniCare. But there's some good ideas and nuggets in there of just the important thing is to be proactive with it. But are you doing surveys? Are you talking to the customers specifically? Are you interviewing them? Are you asking for those reviews? Ask yourself those questions. Even if you're doing reviews, don't let it just be a checkbox that's in there. Some of our most successful accounts, I feel like, also ask their families, how did you hear about us? And they may ask that in person. And the number of times that DomaniCare firms that have worked with us say, yeah, this person came from outside my area because of my reviews. That's amazing insight to you that says reviews is important. And if I don't have good reviews, I'm not going to be able to grow my market share to the surrounding areas. That was insight for that funeral home saying, gosh, this wasn't just somebody that lived down the street. This was someone that came outside the area. And the reason why they did was because of the reviews. That's amazing insight that helps guide your business decisions. Next slide, Caden. So feedback can come from anywhere. We've talked about this a little bit. We decided to change it up and throw some really colorful icons on here instead of some boring words. So what we have is the envelope represents direct mail. You can certainly get feedback via a phone. You can have in-person dialogue. You can get feedback online and through email. You can get Google reviews. Those are all different ways in which you can get feedback. And there's probably others as well, but these are the ones that are the most prominent. So as you're looking at this, again, ask yourself, in each one of your locations, you're maybe a little bit different in what your mix of feedback is. Our profession has done a decent job, I think, of doing surveys. The majority of people that I talk to do surveys via direct mail. And that is to existing clients. I know of many firms that that compensate their funeral directors based on the results that they get from those surveys, for example. A lot of the surveys that are out there are very intensive. It might be more of like a 30-question survey. You can definitely implement in your staff training of asking and following up with the family to make sure that that survey is complete, things of that nature. So a lot of people are doing a lot of different things to get that feedback. But it is interesting as you're looking at all of this, and what I challenge my staff to do, myself to do, and what I would challenge you to do is to put yourself now in the seat of the consumer, okay, of the family. And then ask, okay, if I was the family, how would I want to give feedback? If I wanted to give feedback, what method would be my preference on there? And your preference might be different than my preference, but do you serve a lot of different types of people from a lot of different backgrounds that probably have a lot of different feedback that they want to give? Absolutely. If you're only sending direct mail surveys, for example, to get feedback, then you're probably only going to get feedback from a certain segment of your population that is most likely to fill out the direct mail survey. Now, I know myself, and I am an aftercare family. I didn't mention this in my introduction, but the reason why I left real estate and advertising and marketing and jumped into the funeral profession was I lost my dad when he was 46 and I was 25, and he had brain cancer. And I'm the oldest of 7 kids. And I had to be there to plan my dad's funeral. And the funeral itself went well. We're a traditional family and had a very traditional service. It was what happened after that, which was nothing, that is what motivated me to dive into this profession and change that a little bit. I understand that funeral professionals are very good at the time of death and that onset of grief, but I think there's a tremendous opportunity on what we do after the service too, that can yield some tremendous results. So even though I'm a little younger, I am still an aftercare family, and you obviously have families that have younger people that are aftercare families that you need to get feedback from. It would be very unlikely for me to fill out a direct mail survey. I don't know that I ever would do that. But is my feedback still important? Probably for the funeral home to get that feedback? Absolutely. And so it's important that you have a multi-pronged approach to that, because each of your families are going to have different preferences. Sometimes we get concerned from some people if I don't want to, overwhelm them with requesting feedback. I think it's kind of the opposite. You showing that you're proactive and that you're wanting to understand the families and what their preferences are actually is a really positive thing. Now, I don't think you should do all of it on the exact same day, but I think if you do it kind of incrementally and strategically, and that's what our account managers are there to help you with, and what we certainly are. If I can be of any help in strategizing your approach, I'd be more than happy to help you with that. But leveraging the tools and the resources we have at DomaniCare to be able to do this, I think can be very, very powerful. And again, you can supplement that. I would think that, if direct mail is working for you, for example, keep doing it. But should we also maybe be doing a text message one for those that would prefer to do it on their mobile devices, and maybe they would prefer a little shorter survey where we get just the high level things? My argument would be absolutely. And there's some really interesting insights that we've seen as we've kind of rolled out the survey functionality, for example, too. All right, next one. So the key to gathering feedback is being proactive. And I think we've harped on that theme a couple different times. And again, kudos to you for already being proactive by being a DomaniCare client. I think you're already showing that you are doing that. We know that DomaniCare is a text message aftercare program, and there are a lot of ways that you're getting feedback. So then the question is, if you're being proactive, how are you using that feedback to guide your business decisions? We're going to talk about that in just a sec. So here's some of the feedback. If you read any of your responses, which owners, if you're out there, raise your hand. Do you ever read your responses that come from DomaniCare? Seeing some head nods and some hand raises. Awesome. There are so many golden nuggets that exist just even in the text message that's there. You get to learn about what staff did an exceptional job. They often call individual people out. They get very, very specific with the reviews. I think more than most industries, these people are passionate about sharing their experience. And it's so interesting that kind of prior to DomaniCare launching, when we looked around at the funeral homes all across the country, the average funeral home only had 6 reviews on their Google profile at that time. And they were majority negative reviews, because I think the average funeral home had a 3.1 star rating. And that was across the board. And it was because we weren't proactive at asking for the feedback. Then the only feedback that was coming was the negative feedback. We weren't getting the positive feedback as well, so that you could get the reassurance of what you were doing right. That's been so crucial. Now, that's been a game changer, as we mentioned kind of in the introductory slide and where we're at now. Through the DomaniCare program and all of our partnered funeral homes, we've been able to help generate over 21,000 5-star reviews for funeral home partners. There's feedback that is in each of those. Here's one example. We didn't put the name or funeral home with it, but this is an actual response that came from a DomaniCare campaign. Just so that you know, I truly appreciate the continued communications from your establishment. The professionalism and customer care courtesies are not just second to none, but they are the best. Top notch. I commend you all for your graciousness. This is a trying time, and what you offer is beyond words. God bless. Is that good feedback to receive? Well, I think it's great. And I think sharing that with your staff and looking at that and saying the continued communications they called out, the professionalism is there, the customer care is there, we're doing an exceptional job. That means keep doing that. They love it. That is what is helping you grow your business. Go to the next one, Caden. This one says, I have to say how hard it is to find integral people in this world, and to find them with added compassion is even harder. I am deeply grateful for the thoughtfulness, a truly fitting memory of all of you have done to support this forever transition. It really does honor my daughter. Thank you. And then one more, I think, right? My dear Elizabeth, when our Lord sent you, he sent an angel. Thank you so very much for having us in your hearts and minds. Eustachio, I believe, is happy you let me and my family know that there are wonderful, loving people here on earth. Thank you, Elizabeth and Schooler Funeral Home. May you be blessed with all the best there can be. So this is just good feedback to get. Some best practices that exist with accounts across the country is sharing these responses with your staff. I know many people do this on a monthly basis. Maybe you don't give complete access to the partner portal to every single one of your staff members, but you have the ability to also export and or show that feedback that's there and circulate those reports to your staff members. That would be a best practice I would definitely encourage you to do to get all their eyes on it. It also gives them kudos that if their name is called out on that, that makes them feel good. They got feedback knowing that they had made an impact in that family's life. That's important to hear. And I think that funeral directors and funeral staff don't often get that kind of recognition, right? We're in this immense grief while people are there at the funeral home, and then they go on their way. We don't really get to see what happens afterwards. This gives that transparency into the lasting impression that their tremendous work has done for those families. We already mentioned this, the 21,000 reviews. I think there's one more stat on there, right? No, there was. I think we took it off. So then the review side of it too, and hopefully you've been very pleased with the reviews that have been able to be generated through this process. But there are often really great gold nuggets. When someone is willing to share publicly on a board like a Google business profile, that is tremendous. That is absolute gold that exists there. So great examples here. From the moment I contacted them until after the service, for both of my parents, they were nothing but kind, compassionate, and like family. They even texted me on the day of my mom's birthday months later to let me know they were thinking about me and my family. It is very hard to find that kind of love and compassion in this world. And because of that, I wholeheartedly recommend them to anyone who has had a loss. And the thing I love about these reviews that we're getting to and that we kind of are showing in this presentation is the joint team effort that we have between the DomaniCare staff and your staff there at the funeral home. This is a really good example of both working hand in hand. They obviously loved the text message that came on their mom's birthday, but it was also because of the tremendous service that they had done for both parents prior that they felt that way. And so that reemphasizes it. And I think that that also shows that this is why this is so important. To get that feedback, you realize that it is absolutely making an impact just to do the follow-up and the check-in and to see how they're doing. This next one, I can't express my appreciation enough for the care they gave to me when my husband passed away. Brooke took care of everything which, with such compassion and patience. Elizabeth was also another great comfort to me during such a terrible time. They were professional and compassionate in every way. I would strongly recommend Brooke and Elizabeth to help you when you lose your loved one. I'm so grateful I found them. I mean, how cool is that? That somebody on that board said that. If I was a family that needed to find a funeral, I would probably walk in there and say, can we work with Brooke? You know, that testimonial says Brooke is the person that I want to work with. That gives you great insights on Brooke is a valuable member of our team. She is getting tremendous feedback from these families. And sometimes you might have ideas in your mind of which funeral director or which staff member is doing an exceptional job, but it's always good to get the feedback from the family on what they think too. That really breeds tremendous success. So we talked about this too. We're grateful that we've had the ability to serve this of just the 1.5 million messages last year. I think we're on track to double that this year. And one thing that you need to just know about us too, and I think you do know this, but we are a human company. We're obviously powered by technology to be able to do this in mass, but every single text message is read and responded by a live human. We do not want to get into the world of robots and automation to the point where we lose the human connection that's there. We've invested significant resources in training and development of our staff to ensure that we give the best quality possible. The other thing I absolutely love about what we've created with DomaniCare, and hopefully you find this valuable as well, is the 14,000 of those messages were messages of escalations. We call them escalations internally. Sometimes that makes people go, oh dear, was that like complaints or people that were frustrated? That's not the case. It's just the loose ends. And you've probably all received messages like that of just so-and-so needs another death certificate. So-and-so is wondering what happened to this. There are things of that nature that the staff there at the location need to address personally. But we're grateful that we can get that information to them. Right place, right time, right people. And that we can kind of bridge that gap so that we have happy and satisfied families. When you have that, they're raving fans. They will continue to tell their friends and family, you need to use that funeral home, your funeral home, okay? All right, so kind of towards the end here, we're going to talk about these 4 rules for responding to customer feedback. Step 1 is implementation and being proactive and getting the feedback. Now, once you get the feedback, what are you doing with it? We talked about sharing it with your staff, but this is the way in which you can respond to that customer feedback. That then takes that one little experience and actually amplifies it to the point where they go, gosh, they went above and beyond, and it's just really incredible. So the first one is acknowledging feedback promptly. This is why we love text messaging and SMS text messaging surveys as well. With a direct mail type approach, if somebody had a negative experience, it took how long for them to receive the survey, how long for them to fill it out, how long for them to put it back in the mail and eventually get back to your staff. Is that survey loop a long process? And if you have someone that was disgruntled or frustrated or had a negative experience, how many people have they now talked to about their negative experience? Okay, so feedback needs to be responded to promptly. So if you get anything in a DomaniCare text message, if you get it in a survey response or in a Google review, you need to acknowledge that feedback and act on it promptly. So here's a little blurb on this. Your window of time to engage a customer is slim. If you wait too long to follow up, it tells customers you don't care about their input or simply aren't paying attention. And that's all the ammo an unhappy customer needs before they cancel services or smear your reputation online. Make it a point to respond to feedback within 24 hours. Just acknowledging feedback can buy you more time to repair the relationship, and it shows the customer you're ready and willing to do what it takes to retain them. While the need is less urgent in the case of positive feedback, it's still important to show customers appreciation when they go out of their way to praise you. Plus, engaging with customers after a positive experience means more opportunity to capitalize on it. So I want to share an experience, non-funeral industry related, but of a business that I thought did a pretty good job of this. So I recently went on kind of a bucket list fishing trip to Alaska with my father-in-law. He's about to turn 80 and he's had this dream of taking his sons and son-in-laws on this fishing trip to Alaska, and it was a wonderful experience. But on the way back, and if any of you have been to Alaska, it's kind of a long process to get home and there. It's like worse than going to Hawaii. You have so many hopper planes, and it's a good 24 hours plus experience. Well, on our last leg, we went from a hopper plane in Gustavus over to Juneau, and then we went from Juneau to Seattle, and then from Seattle to Utah. And on the flight from Seattle to Utah, A, it was delayed. And then B, we were second in line to take off after we were already like so frustrated that it was so late, and we were tired and exhausted from our day of travel. And I learned that this happens, I guess, kind of often in the airline industry. And I travel a lot, and I've never had this experience. But anyways, they were second to take off, and the pilot got on the intercom and he said, I've logged in too many hours, and I'm going to now turn this flight back around to the airport, and this flight is canceled. And that was all he said. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I have my family that hasn't seen me for 7 days. My wife is going to wig out. This cannot happen. And I'm like, that's it? You're just going to send the message over the intercom and we all just have to deal with it? I mean, I was just not happy. And this was Alaska Airlines, by the way. And I'm a pretty big Delta fan. I haven't had that kind of experience on Delta. And anyways, so in my anger and frustration, I decided to take a picture of kind of the aisles of the airline, and I posted that picture on Instagram. And I tagged Alaska Airlines and kind of explained to my audience the negative experience that I was having, and that I was frustrated, and that I also missed Delta, and I tagged Delta in my message. And I mean, that's how ticked I was. I don't do that very often, but I was like so frustrated that I'm like, we are second to take off, and you have canceled this flight, and there is no explanation for it other than, I'm like, if you knew you were close to logging your hours, why did you get on the plane? Like, anyways, I went on a tangent. Within about 1 to 2 minutes of me posting that, I got an immediate response in my private messages from Alaska Airlines, a customer service representative. And they first expressed their sincere apologies. And I'm like, yeah, thanks. Like, what else are you going to do? You got to do something. But it was amazing that just from that alone, all of a sudden my temperature started going down. I thought, okay, they're a business. Times are tough. This is a pandemic. Who knows what's going on behind scenes that I'm very unaware of. Maybe this isn't fair of me. So all of a sudden I start backtracking, even though I've now broadcast to my whole community, right, about this negative experience. And anyways, they went through, kind of explained the situation a little bit further with me. And then they gave me $100 voucher for a future flight and said, we hope that this did not burn our relationship with you. We'd love to make it up to you. And we're, again, so sorry for it. And it was just amazing that the quick responsiveness of just responding to my feedback that was negative. I'm sure that for them, they were frustrated with me too, that I went straight to my people, my community and my sphere of influence, and wanted to rant on that, which is not my style, but I was obviously cranky and without sleep and kind of miserable. And they turned that whole situation around for me to the point where I was like, would I fly Alaska again? I'm like, I think I would. I think that they did a good enough job that I'm not going to go down that path and say, I'm never going to fly with Alaska again. No, that curved it back around to the point where, and I had some good dialogue with friends that commented on it, and my temperature came way, way, way down because of that. So just an example of how that works. But you need to make sure that you're doing that also with the opportunities that you have. I think we do a very good job with our partnered funeral homes on the local level with text messaging, because we do those escalations, and generally you get back to those families pretty quickly. I think we're doing a pretty good job from the pulse that I've gotten from kind of our account management team and operations team. I don't see that being a gaping hole in problems. But what we could be doing better with all of our partnered firms, and this isn't on Domani, we can help educate you and nudge you, but you're going to have to be proactive about this. So I would say write this down. But are you responding to the Google reviews? In your business profile, when somebody leaves a review, it gives you the opportunity to respond to that review. And you'll notice in one of my previous slides, you need to respond to the positive review, and you also need to respond to the negative review. There are ways in which you can diffuse the negative review. If you're struggling with it, I would say definitely send it to us. We'd be happy to help you draft what that response should look like. If you need help, sometimes those can be a little hard. Maybe you're on edge and you're taking it personally and you want to lash out, or you felt that the feedback was unfair, or that the people didn't know all of the story, right? You can feel justified in that frustration. However, you can turn this into a very positive experience if you respond to it promptly and you respond to it professionally and with kindness and in the right way. So I would encourage you to be disciplined with that. And whoever is managing your Google business profile at your funeral home, you need to encourage them that within 24 hours that they respond to every new review that comes. And I would say that is our biggest missed opportunity that is existing. And one of the big reasons why we wanted to do this webinar is to help you do that. That will make a massive difference, both on the positive and the negative reviews. Okay, so there's a takeaway item for you of something that I would do as it relates to acknowledging that feedback promptly. All right, next one, Caden. Oh, this was a cool example too. Sorry, I'm using some examples outside of the profession, but sometimes it's nice to take a break from funerals, and we can look at other really amazing things like Elon Musk and flying to the moon and his electrical cars and whatever else he's doing. So this was one where somebody tagged Elon Musk. Notice a couple of things here. August 18th, 2017 is when that was given. And he said, he tags Elon on Twitter, and he said, can you guys program the car once in park to move back the seat and raise the steering wheel? Steering wheel is wearing. Elon responds on that same day. This is Elon Musk is responding on that same day via Twitter for everyone to see. Good point. We will add that to all cars in one of the upcoming software releases. So he responded to it, but guess what else? He actually did it. The feedback that he received from this individual, this raving fan, he took the feedback, he applied it. The next software release, it actually happened, all within that. This is what it's all about in the world that we live in, is your customers, your families are wanting to dialogue with you, and they'll do it via text, they'll do it via Google, they'll do it via Facebook. You know, a lot of different ways they can dialogue with you. The important thing is that you're responsive and that you do it. If you say you're going to do it, then make sure that it happens. All right, next slide, Caden. So again, traditional funeral service feedback loop. And this is where we just need to do a little bit better job of being a little bit more responsive. Again, we're not trying to dog on the direct mail survey, because they do work and there is feedback that is there. That's not the point, but just showing kind of the weaknesses that exists within this. You know, family fills out and returns a survey. 1 to 2 weeks later, the funeral home views and analyzes the results. You know, or in the funeral survey, mails it out. You see the point of this loop that exists. That's a lot of time that we're not getting back to it. And in a world that we live in today, where we have technology at our fingertips and the ability to dialogue with our customers right there, then we should be doing it promptly, as quickly as we possibly can. All right, next one, Caden. The next one, be respectful. And this is as it relates to, again, if somebody lashes out, I think one of our very early clients, this was back east, I want to say it was like Baltimore, but it was a phenomenal funeral home, very well respected in the community. And they came to us and they had a 1.3 star rating on Google. And that is not representative of who they were as a funeral home. And what had happened is there was an accident where one of the funeral directors, I think that was driving the hearse, accidentally ran over a dog. And obviously that hurt the owners of the dog. But what they did is they rallied all their friends and they lashed out at the funeral home via Google. And it was just negative review after negative review after negative review. It was really devastating to see. Things like that could kill your business. I mean, and they kind of said, we have no idea what to even do with this. So what we encouraged them to do to kind of problem solve, number one, was generate more positive reviews. And you've maybe heard our really awesome, cheesy funeral joke as it relates to reviews, is that you can't cremate a bad review, but you can bury it. You're supposed to laugh at that joke. Carolee is laughing. Thank you. Appreciate that.
That was great, John.
Thank you. Thank you. What we mean by that, right, is like if you were to cremate it, you'd be removing that review. You can't do that. It's very hard. I mean, it is possible, and you can go challenge Google, very time consuming, but that can be really, really hard. The better thing, first and foremost, is to try and fill it with positive reviews, because no one is reading page 3 of your reviews. They're going through page 1, maybe page 2. They're not going to page 3, page 4. So that's what we did with them very quickly, in a matter of, because they were new with us, we did a catch-up campaign with them. We were able to get them from 1.6 stars up to like 4.5 in a matter of a month and a half. And that was because we buried that negative review with all the positive reviews above it. So then it became almost irrelevant. But the be respectful part is also important. We also encourage them to respond to every negative review, even though it was maybe not warranted in the attacks and the accusations that they made to that funeral director in the funeral home. We encourage them to be respectful as they responded. So it says here, it may seem like a no-brainer, but when you're reading particularly harsh feedback, it's difficult to not take it personally and bring the heat. You're human after all. When you get punched, your first instinct is to punch back. But remember, customer feedback is not personal. It's just the reality of doing business. When you get miffed, take a moment to check yourself. Make some tea, take a deep breath, do a pep talk in the bathroom if you need to, and then respond. Our team knows this. We have a list of 7 core values at our company. And the number 1 value at our company is to lead with positivity. And I always joke, or not joke, but I tell our team, we have actively tried to recruit as many positive people as possible, because I'm the type that can sometimes get miffed and frustrated and lead with kind of that like type of mentality. But when I surround myself with positive people that encourage me to just take a breather, Jon, cool down a little bit, take a walk, let's figure this out together. And we do our best to do that. We're also human, right? We make mistakes, and it's a matter of the mentality that you go back around that to try and make that wrong right. The next one is dig into the issue. So a lot of customers leave vague feedback. For instance, they may say that they had terrible service, but not give any specific. Was wait time too long? Was a particular employee rude? Was there a problem when a customer tried to make a return? Make a point to get more information. First, do your homework, consult with your team, and check their customer history to figure out what's happening. If you can't find answers, then follow up with the customer for more information. Another way to help with this is to keep all your feedback in one place. This is why we love the partner portal. It's all there. You have written history that's there. We can sometimes go back and read through the text message history to see if there's any gold nuggets. Maybe they left a bad review. Let's go see how we dialogued with them via text messaging. See if there's other insights that are gleaned. But bare minimum, I'd say get on the phone, talk to them, or text them and ask for additional information and say, we are so sorry. We would love to learn more about this issue. Please let us know how we can help. Extend yourself and try to dig in, get the full scope of the problem, and then do your best to try and solve it. So DomaniCare Surveys, are any of you using the survey functionality that okay, Carolee's shaking her head. And some of you I know aren't showing your camera screens. So we launched, a month and a half, 2 months ago. Currently, it's a free service. It's just an add-on that you can turn on with your DomaniCare offering. So currently, no additional cost associated with it. But you have the ability to send out a survey. 5 to 8 questions is generally what we suggest. And you get to customize the questions. We kind of have a template of the more common questions that we're using, but you have the ability to send out surveys via DomaniCare as well. And so I would encourage you to work with your account manager if you'd like to try this, and to see if it's something you would like to incorporate in your feedback loop that is there. So what this enables you as funeral homeowners to do is to just improve the product offering and services, obviously measure customer satisfaction, show that they value or that you value the customer opinions, improve customer retention. Obviously creating legacy families is important, make better business decisions, and improve the customer experience. All of these things are really, really positive. Another just total side note on it, a lot of funeral homes that we work with, or that are starting to pilot this. I think we have 55 locations that are starting to do surveys. And many are using their fifth question is asking if they would like additional pre-planning information. Again, as we mentioned, a lot of our staff came from backgrounds in pre-planning and the pre-need side of the business. And so we've always said, is there opportunity there with our aftercare efforts to bridge that gap? And this has been really pretty remarkable. Of the survey responses that come in, about 30% of those responses are asking for additional pre-planning information. When that happens, just so you know, we've turned on automation to that so that you'll get an email directly to maybe the pre-need advisor or to yourself or whatever the case. You can choose who that is via email, and you can respond to that family right away. But that's an opportunity too, kind of from a return on your investment, that you could add that. And the way you probably all know this from the campaigns that we do, we don't love to just ask from the family. We love to give and then ask, and then give and then ask. And so that's why the first message we generally send is just pure outreach and care. We're thinking of you. Then the next one might be a Google review. Then the next one will be, we want to provide free resources. Then the next one could be, we'd love your feedback. We're asking them to do something. So every location is different. We don't have an exact formula for this. Again, you have very competent and wonderful account managers. I would just encourage you, if you are interested, to reach out to your account manager to see how you could turn that on and strategize a little bit about how you could use and leverage surveys as a part of your DomaniCare offering. So we wanted to definitely cover that as a part of this as well, that you're more than willing to do that. We're doing that kind of through the end of the year. After that, it's going to be an additional just $100 a month in your subscription, but that's for all of your families to receive that survey functionality. The results are also all built into the partner portal. So it's a one-stop hub for all things, all responses, review trends, and then also survey responses as well. Customer experiences. Your customer's perception of how your company treats them. 86% of buyers are willing to pay more for a great customer experience. That's huge. Surveys help create a great customer experience. 72% of customers will share a positive experience with 6 or more people. And these are studies. Caden can probably tell us where he got the data from. But 13% of customers will share a negative experience with 15 or even more. And only 1 in 26 unhappy customers actually complain. 25 out of 26 leave. 1 in 3 customers will leave a brand they love after just one bad experience. And 92% would completely abandon a company after 2 or 3 negative interactions. So it's pretty significant. This is why feedback is so important, but how you respond to that feedback is even more crucial. So why did we do short form SMS surveys? This kind of gives some data. And again, we'll send you all of these slides and a recording of this presentation so you don't need to take rigorous notes on this part. But the reason why is it enables funeral homes to understand the voice of the customer quickly. That's really what this is all about, is speed and how important that is. We just talked about the Elon Musk experience. You need to get that feedback quickly and often, and you need to respond to it quickly and often. 52% of customers will not complete surveys with 7 questions or more. And that is, again, based in a lot of study on that. And that's why we keep it between 5 and 8 questions. Depending on kind of the strategy and the tactic. The current industry standard for the funeral profession is 14 plus questions from the surveys we've seen that are out there. Return rate for direct mail surveys is 1.5% to 3%. That can be higher based on the method that you do it. We know a lot of locations through various consulting type efforts have a methodology of where you talk about the survey in the arrangement conference, you do follow-up calls, things of that nature, where you can yield a 30, 40, 50% response rate. But there's a lot of manual effort in your systems and processes to yield that. Generally speaking, though, direct mail is obviously on the decline. The cost for industry leaders in direct mail surveys can be very, very expensive. And direct mail surveys take 1 to 3 weeks to get the feedback, where SMS surveys are typically in the same day. And in fact, it's instantaneous if you're watching it. So it can be right there, you can respond. And so the hope is, as you do that, you're logging into the partner portal every day. and you're seeing, okay, looks like we got some new reviews that we need to respond to. Looks like we have some survey results that came in. Now it's time for us to respond to them. And it just becomes a part of your daily habits with your staff, is that you're going through this on a regular basis. You're responding, you're getting feedback. I promise and assure you that business will go up as a result of this. You're probably all familiar with this slide, so we don't need to go through it, other than just highlighting that if you do turn on the survey functionality, you'll see kind of on the right-hand side there that it does include the survey responses, the response rates that's associated with it, reviews, et cetera. So that will all then be built into your partner portal. And then there's another view that you can kind of drill down into the specific programs that you're running. And in this case, bottom left kind of shows about your client satisfaction survey. If you look on the right-hand side of the screen, it shows just the experience and the way we built it out. It's very clean, easy to understand. And you can kind of track that. If your facilities and vehicle, for example, are low, you can make changes on that specific thing. Focus on the things that have the lowest results that are attached to that. And then, yeah, you'll see that pie chart at the bottom of there shows the number of people that have requested pre-planning information. So fun thing to track. I would say from a return on your investment standpoint, we always talk about this internally. I think the messaging alone is absolutely worth the program. But when you can add the reviews that drive at-need business, and when you can also create pre-need opportunities through that, that is high yield on your return on your investment in this program. So we're hitting a lot of different points that hopefully you find also helpful. The next slide just shows some sample screenshots. Again, we will send you all of these slides of just what that looks like on the mobile device, and gives you an idea of what type of questions you could ask. Obviously, you could do, why did you choose the funeral home? You can select all the reasons why they chose it. How would you rate? This is done on a star rating. The number 3 one there, how likely would you recommend? We're using kind of the 0 to 10. And then the open form fill of customer satisfaction of just, they can type up anything that they would like. And then that last question there is more of a yes, no. Would you like information on pre-planning? Yes or no. They select it, and then we automate an email that goes out to your staff to follow up with them. All right. Last rule. The fourth rule here is don't be afraid to continue the conversation. It's important to address feedback quickly, but you don't have to hold the entire conversation online. You'll actually get more respect from a customer if you ask to hop on a call to discuss further. It shows initiative and reinforces the fact that you want to resolve their issue above all else. So when an email exchange is going nowhere, try switching it up and continuing the conversation over the phone or in person. So hopefully you do that. And you're looking at this and saying, just be proactive with the feedback. The more proactive you will be, the more positive experiences you'll have. And that will create raving fans. And that will be another way that word gets out to the community. They'll talk about it without question. Carol Lee was so amazing. I had a concern. She picked up the phone, she called me, and we got it all fixed. And, that's an awesome experience. And she will tell everybody, when you go talk to Carol Lee when you're at the funeral home. That's what's going to happen. It's going to be really powerful and positive. All right, next slide, Caden. All right, so summary and action items for you. So feedback in any form allows you to reflect on what went well, what did not go well, and what you can improve on. In order to get enough feedback for it to be representative and useful, you need to be proactive in seeking it. Number 1, keep all feedback in one place to easily reference and track progress. That's on us. We're trying our best to do that through everything we're building out with the partner portal, so that you log in and it's a one-stop shop for all your feedback that's there. That really helps you stay organized. On top of it, you can filter and view based on each of the clients and their unique profiles that are there. Treat each piece of feedback as an opportunity to enhance the customer experience. And number 3, make a plan to gather more feedback and implement changes to your day-to-day operations. All right. So that is, let's go back to the other slide, Caden. We'll get to this one in just a second. So that is kind of the end of the webinar, and talking about how to gather feedback and use that feedback to make better business decisions in a post-pandemic world. So hopefully that was helpful. any questions that you have while you have myself and a lot of our account management team and our marketing people all here on the presentation that we could maybe answer for you. Nope. No questions. Okay, that's all right. You know how to find us. So you obviously have the contact information of each of your account managers. I also including this in the slides that we'll send back out to you. I'm an open book. So if you ever need to reach out to me specifically via text, call, email, you name it, I'm here for you. Definitely want to do that. One other thing that we have implemented internally, we want to practice what we preach. And I know, Hannah, do you want to just talk about the surveys that we're sending out to our client funeral homes, just so that they're aware that those are coming and that we do take that feedback seriously?
Yeah, we just started reaching out, like Jon said, pressing what we preach, and we want your feedback on our services and feedback on the account, working with your account managers. We sent out a survey last week to the majority of our clients. Hopefully you received that. If you didn't, that will be coming periodically to you. And it just has about 5 or 6 questions just for some follow-up and feedback. And if you have any great ideas or improvements to the system, let us know.
Yep, definitely. So we want to capture feedback in many ways too. And so we are implementing kind of our own survey system too for our clients. And we'd love your participation in that. We'll keep it short and easy for you. But we want to definitely make this a world-class experience for you. We know we're not perfect, but we're doing our best to provide the best service possible. And so just know we're here for you and we're listening and we're more than willing to do our best to make it a better experience for you as well. So, all right, go back to the next one, Caden. We'll just kind of close out with this right here. So just an FYI, if this was beneficial, and we'll probably do a little follow-up survey, Caden, to all attendees when we send out the recording. We'd love feedback on just this. We'd like to improve this experience. This was our very first one. And so our hope is that we can do these on a monthly basis, that you can also help us decide on what topics you'd like us to cover. And how that information can be helpful and useful. Ultimately, I'd love to also compile best practices. So things that we're hearing that are happening at maybe locations in different states, and how people are using it. We do have a lot of those. So we may even have guest speakers or testimonials or just examples to share in these as well. If you'd ever be willing to do that, please let us know. I don't know that you want to just hear me every single month. And I know we can rotate around our staff too, but I'd love to just make this a wonderful value add as being a part of this network of funeral homes, that you can get great ideas of what's working and how you're using it as a tool within your staff, so that you are getting everything that you can and more out of the program. So the next one that we're doing is more just timely as it relates to the holidays. The holidays for us on the Domani team is our very busiest time of year, because all of our locations want to do holiday messaging. So it all descends at one time. But rest assured, we're going to be just fine. We navigated it very well last year and feel like we have a really good idea on how this is all going to go in this year and in future years. But we also have some really cool, innovative ideas. Ringless voicemail, for one, is one that we have tested at a few locations, and it has gone very well. So new kind of little features that you could try just for the holidays, for example. But this will be creative ideas for funeral homes to follow up with families during the holidays. And so we'll kind of be compiling some good ideas, both on the Domani side, but then also from our clients as well. And that is going to be on November 3rd at 11:30. And so that way, as you're going through your planning and you're thinking about what you're going to do for your families during the holiday season, hopefully we can generate some ideas and give you enough time to implement them sometime around the Thanksgiving to Christmas, New Year period, so that you can really pack an amazing impact. I also think it's a good time. You could potentially even do surveys during that period, just once a year maybe, survey your families all at one time, possibly. Lots of different things that you could do. We want to talk about the resources and kind of ideas and best practices. So that is the one. So mark your calendars, and we'll send out more emails and opportunity for you to register for that event as well. Okay, I think that brings us to the end. But it is so good. It's been so fun to just even see your faces. We think about you guys a lot, and I'm not supposed to say guys, right, Hannah? We think about you all a lot, and are grateful for you and your partnership, and just know we have a strong desire to do right by that and to provide the best service we possibly can.